What's up, my healthy friends? You've arrived here for a beautiful conversation that is almost certainly going to push the boundaries of your mind and what you thought was possible with said mind. First and foremost, in 2022, it's my mission to coach 300 people to get control of their emotional eating so they can lose weight and actually keep it off without counting calories or eating rabbit food. So who have I got here on the show to melt your brain in a way that you didn't know it could be melted? Well, we've got Lisa Warner. Lisa is a best-selling author, speaker, and teacher of how simple it really is to heal our own bodies, naturally and organically, without medicine, believe it or not. After finding herself facing cancer and not wanting to go down the medical path with chemo, radiation, pharmaceuticals, or radical surgery, she decided to go out on her own and learn how to get her own body to heal itself. What she discovered was that healing is far more simple and natural than the medical model makes it out to be. All it took was, are you ready for this? All it took was a shift in perspective. That's it, a shift in perspective. She now teaches anyone who is willing to learn how to shift their perspective away from the medical mindset and into the universal laws of self-healing. What a rabbit hole of a topic this is going to be. Welcome to the show, Lisa. How you doing?
Thanks, Matty. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you because I really love it when we get people on that really just push the boundaries of the way that conventional thinking happens, because I as you may or may not know, worked in medicine for a number of years, and yeah, it's such a confined container or a restrictive container of ideas and thinking, and anyone that branches out of that for whatever reason is regarded as a quack or a hippie type thing. And so, I mean, a shift in perspective, let's start there. What does that mean?
Well, obviously, a shift in perspective is changing the way you look at things. So Dr. Wayne Dyer always said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's super, super true because when we look at our bodies as a problem, when we look at what's happening to our bodies as a malfunction, when we look at something as being attacked by a disease, then that becomes our reality. It becomes the experience. However, there's a completely different way to look at this. And there's a completely different way which says the body itself has produced the symptoms on purpose. The body is always functioning exactly the way it's designed to function. So we've always heard that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, which means that we are pure consciousness. That is who and what we are. And our bodies are following our consciousness. So when I found myself facing cancer, I realized that somehow I had created this. I had allowed this to happen. So I had created it. And I realized that if I had created it, I can also uncreate it. And I would have to use a different level of thinking to uncreate it than I did creating it. Just like Einstein said, you can't solve the problem from the problem.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that Einstein quote, like, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that you created the problem with, exactly. Which is so logical. So I guess on the other side of, like, you sort of talk about, changing the perspective there. Does that mean that the perspective that you held and maybe people that are sick are holding is detrimental or created the cancer?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'll just speak from my own personal experience. I was struggling in my life at the time that this happened to me. I had fallen down the rabbit hole of self-loathing, just absolute. I was in despair. I was in depression. I was on the verge of, being suicidal. And that's not a healthy mindset to be in. Totally. And so my body was literally changing its shape to mirror what I was thinking. So all of these personal crises that I was going through, the body was responding to each one of these.
Yeah, right. So I'm curious to know how the journey you went on to arrive at the awareness, or to have the awareness that shifting your perspective might be a part of the answer or all of the answer? Like, what led you to that moment? Because I often find in my own sort of health and nutrition world that people that have got cancer or whatever it might be, they eventually find me, and often find me too late, because it's taken them 3 failed attempts at chemotherapy or whatever it is before their belief system is rocked to the core, that they're like, all right, you know, my friend will introduce me to their parent or whoever it'll be, and it's like they're finally ready to hear from Matty, because Matty used to be a scientist, but often they've been through such devastating pharmaceutical exposure at that point.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get the physical body back from that level of chemical trauma and emotional trauma that goes with it. So I'm curious, what led to your awakening before it was too late?
Well, when I was a really little girl and I would go to bed at night, I would be able to float up out of my body, and I would find myself basically in space, looking around, and I could see the earth from where I was. Mm-hmm. The space wasn't a vacuum. It's filled with living life force energy. It is filled with unconditional love. And I knew at 2 and 3 years old that was the space that is infinite. It's eternal. It is always there. It never leaves. It never goes away. And that was what is actually real. And I looked at from that space of just unconditional love. I could look at Earth and I could see the history of the planet. I could see the wars that were happening. I could see old people suffering in nursing homes and bodies that didn't work anymore. I could see people fighting over whose God was whose. And the biggest thing that I could see was the amnesia. I could see that humanity had amnesia, that they did not remember the space of unconditional love, that they had forgotten who they were, that they had forgotten that they are non-physical beings. And so that was it was a profound experience for me, but it was also really confusing, because when I would wake up in the morning back in my body, it was like, oh man, like I looked around, it was like, people here don't function the way they do when they're not in a body. It was a little crazy. So I ended up basically having to bury what I knew to be true at that point and just try to fit into this world that I never could understand. And because I could never understand this world, I could never understand the fighting. I couldn't understand why, when this beautiful planet gives us everything we need. It gives us all the food, all the materials for clothing, for shelter, for free. Why are we all paying for stuff that we get for free? I couldn't understand the money thing. I couldn't make any heads or tails of it. So I was struggling with my life because I just couldn't get into the psychology of why everything was so difficult on this planet. So by the time I found myself really in this dire strait in my physical body, I knew instinctively that it was because I was struggling so hard with my life that my body was struggling to match. And I knew that if I could get back to the awareness that I had when I was a little girl, that would be my answer, because that's that space of unconditional love. And that is that space of mastery, really, of remembering who we are as the soul.
Yeah, it's such an interesting and eloquent description of the universe, I guess, as you talk about it. I'm curious to play devil's advocate, just because that's my nature. So I often think about when we talk about universal love, and I was literally having this conversation with a friend the other day, is that to me it comes across as a really romantic idea, and potentially a lot of the listeners. But when we look at the biology of all animals and the competitive nature and the savagery that exists in every biological species that exists, even plants, they're trying to outcompete one another for sun. Like, I wonder, like, at what point did humanity go from absolute evolution, savagery, kill each other, climb the hierarchy, to that moment where it's like, oh, it was all about universal love, and now we're all connected and nobody wants to hurt each other. Like, where did the universal love that we've forgotten about start?
Well, the universal love has always been there. It's here right now. It has always been. We've just disconnected from it. We have moved our attention point away from what actually is. That's a really long conversation as far as the history of the planet and, what the planet has been through and why we are the way we are today. But basically, as humans, we are designed to love each other. I mean, when we are living in accordance to natural law, we just live at peace. We live in harmony with nature. That's our natural proclivity. But we have been, our attention has been moved into a different, in a different realm of fighting and struggling and trying to survive. We're not meant to survive life. We're meant to thrive in life. We're meant to live.
Yeah, totally. And I would agree with that in the privileged world, that we have the opportunity to thrive. But I can imagine, throughout history and through all the countries that don't have the privilege that we have, it is about survival. And I guess because it's like not dying is the focus of most days, basically. And again, going back to that, like, biological species, most people, animals, when we were more natural and living in accordance with nature, were still hunted. There was still a predator in the jungle that was looking for us, right? No matter how much we loved it.
Yeah, we have to look at the people who have been ruling this planet for a really long time, the ones who make all the rules. They really don't like to share a lot. They don't really have peace and harmony and prosperity and well-being for all as their main goal. So their whole goal is power and money and, the abuse of power. And they make all the rules so that you and I don't have a chance of playing their game. So we're all subject to their rules. So because we have been subject to those rules, we're here trying to survive while, they're doing their thing. And, life is easy for on some levels in that respect for them. However, for you and I, we've never known real, true peace on this planet. Hundreds of thousands of years of war and suffering have been foisted upon humanity. So now we are in the time of the shift of consciousness. This is where we do shift perspective. And from my perspective and direct experience, it's been the shift of consciousness is the shift of the remembering who we actually are. It's the shift of going from we're just limited physical humans to recognizing we are unlimited non-physical souls having this physical experience. And when we shift the set of eyes that we're looking through, instead of looking through the pre-programmed human eyes, look over here, listen to your teacher, listen to your doctor, listen to those eyes, when we start listening through our soul, when we start looking through the eyes of our soul, we start to see things differently. And we start to see things not in terms of the physical circumstances, but we see things in terms of energy. And, we've all heard everything is energy. So when I was struggling in my life, I was using the energy of doubt and guilt and shame and worry and fear. Those were the predominant energies in my life. And my reality was reflecting those energies. So I ended up generating a reality that I had cancer. I was afraid of my own body. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt like a loser. I didn't feel like I had any power to change my circumstances. But then I realized that if I am the soul in this body, I actually do have the power to change these circumstances. So I made it my business to reconnect to that. And I did that I started meditating, and I started asking some good quality questions instead of the, why is this happening to me? And why did I deserve this? What did I do to deserve this? I started out there, and I pretty quickly realized that wasn't going to get me anywhere. So I started to change the quality of question. And I started to ask, what is it that I need to know about this in order to change it? What do I need to know in order to be healthy again? And once I got the mind to stop running and actually be quiet, then my soul level wisdom could step forward, and the answer became completely obvious to me. And the answer was, hey, Lisa, your body's not being attacked by anything. Your body is actually trying to help you. Your body is doing what it's doing for a reason. And you just haven't understood the reason. And as soon as I realized that that was actually what was true, then I also realized that my body could heal itself, because every time I get a cut or a bruise or a break or a sprain, the body heals itself. And I realized that it was my fear of being attacked by cancer that was preventing the healing, because healing doesn't happen in the, in an environment of fear. We can't be in fear and heal at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. So as soon as I realized, oh my gosh, I don't have to fear what's happening to my body. I need to trust my body. And as soon as I started trusting my body, then that was the end of the game, because my body then just started to rejuvenate itself. And it healed automatically. I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that that's where your journey took you. And it's in like a cancer setting, often the way we explain it is that with cancer, it's the body has run out of detoxification options, and so it builds an internal rubbish dump. Which is literally the body doing what it needs to do to have a place in the body for all of the crap to go that you're eating, that you're breathing, that you're thinking. So it is like, the cancer cells do have a function, and the body is doing it because it's run out of other ways to get this stuff out of the body. So I think it's really a really useful thought pattern to be like, my body's doing exactly what it's meant to be doing, and if this is the outcome that it's producing, then there's obviously some things that I'm ignoring.
For sure. Yeah. And, what I learned in my journey was that, I actually didn't learn it until after my journey. I understood in that moment that my body was functioning exactly the way it's designed to function. I realized there was nothing wrong with my body. And then I wrote my book. And a couple of years after, I met somebody who had read my book. And she said, oh, you're the one that knows German New Medicine. And I said, wait, what? And she said, yeah, your book. And the light bulb went on, and I went, oh my gosh, you're serious? Somebody actually did all of the research that backs up what I learned? And she said, yeah, there's an entire branch of science that nobody knows about, because the owners of big pharma don't want people to know that our bodies are designed to heal themselves. They don't want people to know why their body has produced these extra cells or these symptoms, or why the body is not digesting properly, or why you have that rash on your skin. They don't want they want people to think that we're being attacked by these things, or these things are problems, because they're selling the solution, so to speak.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, the solution, keep you alive as long as possible so we can keep making money out of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a
It's
different
very
quality of life
sad.
is a totally different conversation. But
Yeah.
German new medicine, that's like, there's probably a few people thinking, what's that? Tell us what that
Yeah.
is.
This was discovered in around 1980. There's a German doctor named Dr. Reikegerd Hammer, and he was working in an oncology ward. And he received a phone call in the middle of the night that his teenage son had been shot and wounded. And the son fought for his life for about 3 months and then passed away. 3 months later, Dr. Hammer comes down with testicular cancer, and his wife came down with breast cancer, like at the same time. And he thought, wait a minute, that can't be, there's something going on here. This can't just be a random thing. He's like, I'm a totally healthy, fit guy. Like, I know all about this cancer stuff. Like, why me? So first thing he did, he went to all the men in the unit who had been diagnosed with testicular cancer, and he asked them what was going on in your life before you got diagnosed. Every single one of them had faced the loss of a child.
Right.
He was like, well, that's interesting. So then he thought, well, let me do a CAT scan. Let me see what's going on in their brain. Every single one of them had the same spot on their brain. There was a little mark on the brain. He was like, oh, all right. So then he went and he started asking the people that had kidney cancer or pancreatic cancer. Every single person who had the same type of cancer had the same type of crisis happen in their life. And each one of them, when he did a CAT scan, they would have the exact same location on their brain. And so he started doing all of the research, and he started realizing, he discovered there are 5 biological laws, just like the laws of the universe, that they are 100% consistent across the board. And the first law, he calls it the ironclad rule of cancer, is that it always starts with a shock. We receive a phone call in the middle of the night, like, whoa, what just happened? Something triggers us. And that the brain will process that in a certain area, and wherever the brain processes that, it correlates to a body part or body system, and that system will run as long as the conflict is going on. There's the next part of the biological laws, or there is a definite phase of how healing happens. So we start in the conflict active stage, where we receive that shocking news. We're in a conflict active, the fight or flight, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to resolve this? What do we do? The body is doing something during that time. It's either building up cells or decreasing the number of cells, or there could be a slight neurological change in neurological function. Once we resolve the conflict, like, phew, okay, that's over, I'm good to go, then the body goes into a 2-phase healing process. And that's when the actual symptoms start to appear. So if the body has been building up extra cells, say we have a death fright, for instance, the lungs are the organs that respond to a death fright, the breath of life. So caveman sees the saber-toothed tiger, like, oh my gosh, I could die. The lungs start building up extra cells so that the caveman has a better chance of fighting or fleeing and surviving. So there's a reason why the lungs are building up those extra cells. It's a functional change. So then saber-toothed tiger goes away. Phew, okay, danger over. So now the body doesn't need those extra cells. So now, if that conflict was only, 20 minutes long, the body didn't have time to make a whole bunch of cells. But say we have something that's a little more subtle now, like people that smoke. A lot of people that smoke are like, yeah, this is probably not very good for me. Yeah, this is probably going to kill me at some point. There's like a little program running in the back, right? It's like, yeah, it's probably not really good for me. So that little death fright like this could kill me, is what actually starts the lungs creating extra cells. Mm-hmm. So if we've had a really long death fright, so to speak, the lungs can build up a whole lot of extra cells. Then we quit smoking, and it's like, all right, I'm done with that. I'm on to a new, I'm going to develop a better habit, something that's more productive for me. And then the lungs go into healing. But then what happens? All of a sudden, it's like now we have fever, coughing, congestion, spewing up, phlegm, mucus, all kinds of things, because the body is getting rid of those extra cells. So then what happens? We go to the doctor, and what's the question that we ask when we go to the doctor? What's wrong with me? And they have to give us an answer. They can't say there's nothing wrong with you, your body is in healing, because that wouldn't be a good customer model. They wouldn't be able to sell things to a body that is already healing. So when we start to look at the intelligence of the body, we start to look from a different perspective. And we start to notice that, wait, there's a completely different way of looking at things. And this other way of looking at things, it's biologically consistent. The same blueprint runs, whether you're a human, whether you're a dog, whether you're a deer, whether you're a turtle, does not matter. All bodies are built on the same blueprint. So all of the biological laws are consistent across all species.
Yeah, I was going to ask, actually, it's funny that you went there, because I was actually going to go there too and say, or ask, like, from an energy perspective, if you nail the energy stuff correctly, is the environment that the physical body, is the environment that the physical body lives in irrelevant? Is it overpowered by, getting perspective and energy perfectly right? And I asked that just thinking that, 200 years ago, we didn't have sugar companies, we didn't have fast food, we didn't have vegetable oil. And so, the two parts of us, the energetic part of us and, that can access the infinite and self-love, but then the physical body that is here in this reality, in this dimension, is like, if we get the energy right, does the physical mass not really matter and it can get through anything?
On some level, yes. I mean, because if you look at the yogis in the Himalayas, the Yoganandas, the ones who are really spiritually advanced, there are many yogis, they can drink a quart of gasoline and it doesn't affect their body. But that takes a lot of alignment. It takes a lot of spiritual practice. So we have more than one body. We don't have just a physical body. We also have an energy body, the light body. So where all the chakras are, the meridians, the axonal points, there's much more to us that is non-physical than there is that is physical. And it's the non-physical, it is what is generating the physical. So when we are aware of our energy and we're able to keep our energy balanced and stabilized and clear out any energies that are not serving us, then the physical environment really doesn't play a huge role, other than the fact, I mean, if you're eating, Doritos and drinking soda all the time, it's probably not the best thing, because those aren't actual foods. So, totally. The things that are sold in the grocery store under the label of food is highly suspect these days, when you can't read the ingredients on the box. Food comes from the ground. Yeah.
Oh, well, look, Lisa, I'm a bit disappointed, because I was going to meditate 8 hours a day so I could get my energetic body perfect and live on chocolate.
There you go. You can do that. Absolutely. Why not?
If nailing the energy stuff means the physical body can do anything, watch out, KFC.
Yeah, right. Usually once you get just from experience and knowing a whole lot of people who've been doing a lot of spiritual work for a long time, they kind of just don't really have much interest in KFC anymore.
Well, I mean, if you are in alignment with what's true in nature, then yeah, it's highly unlikely that you're going to go towards fast food.
Exactly. You go back to nature and you start growing your own food. So you start noticing it's like, oh, I would rather eat organic because I see what's on the other side. I see what's not organic, and I see that, our bodies can be poisoned. Absolutely. And, the powers that be are doing a really good job of trying to make sure that, that we have as many poisons as possible around, so it's really important for us to become aware of kind of what the game is that's being played on this planet right now. And the game that has been played for a really, really long time that has kept us in this state of warfare and poverty and disease. And, there are reasons that we are the way we are, and we can transcend all of those. And because we are creator beings, we can literally start creating heaven on earth right here, right now. And, this is the shift of consciousness where we start to realize, wait a second, we don't need to keep playing this same old game. We don't need to suffer on this planet. And when we start to realize that there's so much more to who we are, and there's so much more that's available to us. And our bodies are so much more spectacular than we've ever been allowed to know. Our bodies are literally designed to live for hundreds of years. People think that living to, 90 or 100 is like a really long life. Yes. And we can live far, far, far longer.
Yeah, I've definitely seen records of that. From different eras of the past of people living much longer. And there's an idea in a branch of biology too that an animal or any living thing will live 5 to 7 times its age of maturity, which for humans is about 22, which puts us at about 120 to 150 years old. So I'm pretty keen to live to 150. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. And I'm pretty keen to live that long, at least on a really lovely world. I would really like to see a planet where people live in peace and harmony with some dignity and respect, where integrity is kind of the name of the game, as opposed to what we see now with, there are very few world leaders who actually demonstrate, honor and decency and integrity.
Yeah, totally. So I'm just thinking for people listening that are like they're just kind of like trying to wrap their head around these ideas, where is a good place for people to begin, like involving themselves in a practice or some kind of activity to start experimenting with this world without throwing them straight off the deep end?
Well, to practice just managing your own state of being is really the first place to start. Start noticing that, most people are living in states of anxiety and tension and stress. And we actually have full control over our own autonomic systems, and we actually have the ability to take ourselves out of those states of being by sitting, following your breath. Simply notice your breath as it comes into the body. Follow the path of your breath. Following the path of the breath is a practice in following energy, following the non-physical. We're all taught that if you can't see it, taste it, touch it, or smell it, that it's not real. So we're taught to focus on the physical stuff. But there's far more of us that is non-physical than there is physical. So we have to start getting ourselves used to looking at the non-physical things, starting to look at energy. What's the energy that I'm using to generate my reality? If I'm living in anxiety all the time, then I'm using anxiety energy to generate the circumstances of my reality. So I have a reality that makes me anxious. So we have to start seeing the correlation between our own state of being and our life. So starting to manage your state of being by something as simple as sitting and breathing is really empowering if you allow it to be.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's super easy. And I guess what you're touching on, right, is like aspects of meditation.
Yeah. So what meditation, I think, has gotten kind of a bad rap, in many respects. My take on it is we are body, mind, and soul. We are the soul. We've all been taught that we have a soul. We don't have a soul. We are the soul. This is like a key piece of the puzzle, is to notice that we are the soul. We are the non-physical essence. We are the pure consciousness. And the mind is the part that gets programmed. Sit down, listen to your teacher, read, learn all this stuff. What's the answer to this? Oh, not a good answer. Big red check mark. Not good. Listen to your doctor, listen to your teacher. And we've been told to listen to so many other people that we've never been taught how to just listen to ourselves. So the meditation is the quieting of the mind so that we can move past the programming. So we can actually get to the soul, to who we truly are. So we can start clearing out everybody else's ideas from our minds. Because the people that rule the world, they want us to be in states of fear and anxiety. Because if we're afraid and anxious, then we'll very easily follow where they want to lead us.
Yeah.
But they've pretty much just led us to war and disease and poverty. And, so it's up to us to turn this around. And we do that by remembering who we are, because as the soul, we are powerful, brilliant creator beings. There is so much more to who we are. And when we just sit and we start to tune inside to meditate and notice who we truly are as beings, the kindness, the caring, the love that we have, the wanting to live in peace and harmony. Like, that's who we actually are. And when we start to tap into that, we start to feel better, because we start to feel more like ourselves. And that anxiety starts to dissipate. The fear starts to go away as we start to tune in and allow that soul to step forward. And we start to realize there's far, far, far more that is magnificent and magical and brilliant about each and every one of us, and about these dear, sweet bodies that have been very, very much maligned.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious. I've got maybe like a left field question. Is it possible that it's the other way around? And what I mean by that is that we're born into this physical world and we need to be programmed. And humans are interesting species like that, because if a baby's left by itself, it can't figure much out and it'll be eaten by something or it'll die of starvation. And so maybe like this is the path we're actually meant to take, right? Is that we're programmed by our parents and society so that we can actually survive the chaos that currently exists. And then after we've learnt that group of skills, we are then introduced to wonderful people like you, or guides that are able to introduce us to the next like phase of being a human. Because in my mind, if we all start with self-love, like if we start in the beginning with like, oh, self-love, then I don't need to be programmed, then we might not be able to survive.
Well, I look at it a little bit differently, because I look at it as that we are all souls. And as the soul, we choose to come into these physical bodies. And babies are born, they have an immature body, but they're a fully mature soul.
Right.
And the body can't take care of itself. The baby doesn't have the capacity to simply take care of itself, because the body is not mature yet. So the baby needs to be sheltered and protected and honored and respected so that it can grow into its fullness. But because most people believe that the babies are just a blank slate and they need to be taught, then that alone makes people not notice the wisdom that is actually there. When I was 2 and 3 years old, I was having these experiences of being one with the universe. Like, if anybody had asked me just some pointed questions, I would have been able to say a whole lot of stuff. Like, I had a lot of wisdom when I was a little kid, because we're all fully mature souls, no matter what size or shape or maturity level the body is at. We're not these bodies. We are the soul animating the bodies.
Yeah. For anybody that's listening that might have recently had a cancer diagnosis or, is in a cancer journey, or a family member, based on your experience and your journey and all the different people you've worked with over the years, what would you say is the number 1 or 2 bits of advice for them listening to this conversation right now to begin shifting into, like, focusing on their soul or universal love? Like, what's the first step?
Well, the first step is to really be able to sit and start communicating with your body a little bit. Start and get into your body, get back in there, because when we have these things, it literally knocks us out of our bodies. We move out into farther out in our energy field. So we're actually not even present in the body. We're in the mental body, we're in the emotional body, and we are not really fully present. So one of the first things is breathe and get present in your physical body and start noticing, what would you like to have happen? What is the outcome that you would like? And it's up to each and every one of us to create the outcome. We have been taught that doctors are the only ones that know anything about our bodies, and that we need to trust the doctor with our health. Well, unfortunately, we are body, mind, and soul, and we have all 3 parts are of one. And as the soul, we are responsible for the body. Like, nobody else can be responsible for our health. We have to be responsible for our own health. Yeah. So we have to develop the relationship with our body where we can start trusting the body back to health. Our bodies know exactly what to do, but we have been taught that they don't. So we have to start overriding that programming. We have to realize that if I'm going to create the outcome that I desire, and I think about, the level of vibrancy and radiance and fitness and activity, then I need to start moving myself in that direction. So I need to start taking the steps. I can't wait to see if the pills are going to work. I can't wait and see if something else is going to happen. I have to make the outcome happen. I have to start taking steps in that direction. So first step is getting present inside the body so that you can make some clear choices from the body, not from the mind that has been programmed, but from your actual wisdom.
Right. Okay, that's beautiful. It reminds me, actually, when I worked at the cancer hospital, I was good friends with one of the spiritual care doctors, and he and I both left the hospital in the last 2 years based on, the last 2 years, because we didn't want to be a part of that charade. But I remember us talking about his job, and like, it was really just there. He was really just there to tick a box for the hospital, and to like be like, oh, I guess we've got to have someone that does spiritual care. But he's a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher and profoundly believes in this stuff. But his attempts to guide people to connecting with themselves and the type of thing that you're talking about was just so squandered in a medical environment and written off as hippie nonsense and it's useless. And we've really just got you here because a percentage of our patients are religious and they need someone to talk to. But so it's like it's just a box ticking exercise, at least where I worked. But there are people, even with medical degrees, that are talking about this stuff, and there are people outside the hospital, which is where you do most of your healing, right? Is outside of a hospital environment.
Yeah.
It is in the system, at least here somewhere. It's just judged and laughed at. But I think if people listen to people like you and find the tools outside of the hospital system, they're far more likely to make progress.
Yeah, and our body. The body itself is the greatest tool that we have because the body itself is the barometer. It is the pathway home. It is the pathway back to our soul's essence. The body will let us know in every moment whether we are on the path of our soul or whether we are on the pre-programmed path of the mind. Because when we feel resistance in the body, when we feel a tightness, when we feel a heaviness, the doctor says, oh, you have cancer. Ooh, like there's a reaction in the body. Yeah. The body will react that way when something is out of alignment. When we're in alignment, the body expands, it relaxes, it lets us know that, yes, this is the right direction. So if we start just learning how to listen to our bodies, the body is the greatest teacher. If we learn to tune in, no is a contraction, yes is an expansion. If we simply follow that, the body is our GPS right back home to ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So, because you're awesome, and everybody obviously agrees with me if they're still here with us, where can people find you online?
Oh, great. They can find me at my website is connectingyoutoyou.com, spelled out in full. I've written a book called The Simplicity of Self-Healing, and that is available on Amazon. You can find it through my website as well. Yeah, and on Facebook, I have a group called Soul Sourced Healing.
Amazing. And for everybody listening, all the links and whatnot will be down in the show notes below. And if you've enjoyed this episode or you know somebody that needs to hear this conversation, please share it with them, pop it up in social media, do all the tags so we know who's listening and watching in and enjoying and getting stuff from this episode. And so, Lisa, thanks so much for your time. I'm very grateful. And I appreciate your willingness for me to go a little bit of pushback there and have a bit of conversation. I think it's useful to really pull apart some of these topics. So thank you. And before we go, what is one piece of health information you wish more people knew about?
I just wish people knew how brilliant their bodies are and how brilliant they are. We are so much more than we are given credit for. And when we learn to tune in and start trusting ourselves, there's no end to how far we can go.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, Lisa. I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and we'll chat really soon.
Great, Matty. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. Thank you all for listening as well.
Thanks. Bye.